Welcome everyone to the First Peoples Cultural Council information session on the Heritage Stewardship Program. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy days today to join me. Before we begin the session, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. My name is Natalie Picard, and I am a Heritage Planner with FPCC. I am also the program contact for the Heritage Stewardship Program. Today, I'm joining you from my home in Victoria on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples. I myself am a settler of French, Canadian, and Chinese ancestry, and I feel so grateful to work with the First Peoples Cultural Council while I'm also on my own journey, connecting with my Chinese language and cultural traditions. So I hope that today's information session will provide you with some valuable information as you begin your application process. So the First Peoples Cultural Council is grateful to have offices located in two beautiful places on the traditional unceded territories of the Wasanich Nation people, and we also have an office in Tk'emlúps within the unceded territory of the Secwepemc people. We're grateful for the speakers, the artists, knowledge holders, elders who hold on to their language, arts, and youth, or arts and heritage. All right. So let's get started. As a little overview, for the Heritage Program at FPCC, we currently offer 4 different programs and grants that aim to empower communities to steward their heritage by providing opportunities to bring people together and share knowledge. These 4 programs are the Braided Infrastructure Program, the Heritage Stewardship Program here today, the Braided Knowledge Grant, and the Cultural Practices Grant. While I'm focusing on the Heritage Stewardship Program today, we do have the Braided Infrastructure Program also open for applications, and the Braided Knowledge Program will be open soon. So if you want to learn about those other programs to see if your project fits better, which program your project fits best with, you can look at our website, and Lucas has just dropped the link in the chat. So an overview of today's information session, we'll be talking about what is the Heritage Stewardship Program, give some project examples, who can apply, what the eligible costs are, some application requirements and considerations, what support we offer for applicants, the program timeline, and also how to apply. So about the Heritage Stewardship Program. Also shortened to HSP, it offers the opportunity for you to train and support community members in stewarding, protecting, and documenting your community's heritage in the ways that are best suited to your needs. And so to do this, we fund activities that fall within 4 key priority areas: sense of place, climate change, oral histories and protocols, and digitization and archiving. Depending on your project, you may find you want to incorporate several of the priority areas into your one project. For funding, each project area that is incorporated can receive between $10,000 to $25,000, and you can make a maximum funding request of $75,000. And so to make this $75,000 request, you will be proposing a project that incorporates at least 3 of the priority areas. So in the following slides, I'm going to go over each of the 4 priority areas and give some examples of activities that you might incorporate into your projects that would meet those priority area goals. So the first one is sense of place, and it supports activities that document and safeguard sensitive and significant cultural landscapes, places, and sites. So projects that include sense of place should have a mentorship or training component through which youth learn Indigenous and contemporary approaches to managing culture and heritage that are connected to the land. Examples of activities you could do for sense of place include land-based documentation, activities connecting Indigenous knowledge systems, the land and waters, knowledge sharing connected to a specific place, research to understand and caretake a site or place, a place name project, or mentorship and training related to cultural landscapes and activities as some examples. Priority Area 2 is climate change, and it supports activities that explore how communities experience and respond to climate change in the context of Indigenous cultural heritage protection and revitalization. Projects may develop mitigation measures for heritage sites and places that are impacted by climate change. And some activities that fall within this priority area could be documenting the impact of climate change on local fisheries or other food sources, assessing the impacts of climate change on culturally significant places or historic sites, developing beach management strategies to mitigate coastal erosion, or documenting and disseminating information about communities and landscapes that are experiencing climate change impacts. So priority area 3 is oral histories and protocols. So this priority area supports activities that engage elders and knowledge keepers in sharing their stories, activities, and that contribute to documenting Indigenous legal orders, protocols, and ways of knowings. So some activities that fall within the oral histories and protocols priority area include audio and or video recording of interviews of elders and knowledge keepers, like you're seeing in the photo there, translating and transcribing oral history recordings, or research projects or focus groups that document and articulate Indigenous laws, protocols, and knowledge systems. And I'd like to note that FPCC does offer some online training for free for those who are interested in the oral histories and protocols priority area. And this course includes modules on preparing for an oral history interview, on conducting oral history interviews, data management, transcription, and some technology recommendations. And even if you aren't applying for this, this is free for anyone who wants to use as a kind of foundational, like oral histories 101 learning. So I think Lucas has a link for that that we're just going to share here for your reference. And if you do apply for the oral histories and protocols area, we encourage that you take advantage of that training. And then finally, priority area 4 is digitization and archiving. So this supports activities to digitize and or archive existing cultural heritage records. So this could be maps, audio and video recordings, transcripts, photos, illustrations, books, really any culturally important materials that you have. And it can also include using new technologies to document cultural heritage belongings and places, such as using GIS or 3D mapping, so new technologies like that. And some activity ideas for this priority area include creating an inventory of cultural heritage materials to digitize, transferring audio and video cassettes to digital media, training with communities for digitizing and archiving, and cataloging cultural heritage records for an organization, or documenting heritage and sharing it through new technologies. And much like the oral histories priority area, we also have a training available around digitization for free, offered by FPCC's language technology program. And so I encourage you to take a look at these resources. They provide materials with education about how to track metadata, do condition assessments for your materials, and also what tools you can use for cassette and VHS digitization. This year, for the application process for HSP, those of you who've applied before may notice a few changes. These changes are starting this year, allowing you to streamline the process a little bit. So you only have to submit one project description, one work plan, and one budget for this year's HSP application, which means that you can submit one whole project that weaves multiple priority areas together, as opposed to three separate projects or two separate projects. For your application, this could mean that if you have one activity that meets multiple priority areas, you can now submit one budget expense, one work plan activity, rather than having to separate it, which is what happened in previous years. If you're only applying for one priority area, the application process is completely the same as in previous years. I'm going to give some examples of eligible projects now to give a sense of like what we mean by incorporating multiple projects or multiple priority areas into one project. So on the left side of this screen, you can see examples, and on the right side, you can see what priority areas these examples fall into. So I'm going to go through these. The first example is a project that connects knowledge systems or protocols to significant sites by mentoring youth to record oral histories with elders and or knowledge keepers, which would be a sense of place and oral histories project. The next example is to document the changing environment of a significant site while educating youth about the cultural practices that are associated with that site and that environment, which would be a sense of place and climate change project. Third example is to record new oral histories, digitize existing oral histories, and archive them, which would be a very neat oral histories and digitization and archiving project. Fourth example is to assess the impacts of climate change on a significant site and then use technology to document this and monitor the site moving forward, which would be an example of 3 priority areas in one project: sense of place, climate change, and digitization and archiving. And the 3 other examples are incorporating site visits with youth elders to develop protocols that communities can implement to protect sacred sites against climate change. Another 3 incorporated into one project. And then mapping projects that digitize and match archival materials to significant sites could be a project with sense of place and digitization and archiving. And then finally, camps that gather youth and elders to document knowledge at significant sites, which would be sense of place and oral histories and protocols. So now I'm going to discuss the application process and eligibility for this grant. So who can apply for the Heritage Stewardship Program? You can apply if you're a BC-based organization that has a mandate or focus that includes First Nations heritage. And eligible applicants include recognized BC First Nation bands and tribal councils, and non-for-profit societies registered in BC with a good standing and governed by BC First Nations individuals, BC First Nations-led museums and cultural spaces, and urban and off-reserve BC's First Nations organizations. For nonprofits and societies, at least 65% of directors must identify as recognized BC First Nations to be eligible. And then finally, recognized BC First Nations schools or adult education centers operating on BC First Nations lands. And please note that FPCC is unable to fund K-12 classroom activities or post-secondary accredited courses or tuition. If you are applying as a society or organization that is not a BC First Nation government, FPCC may ask you to provide documentation confirming the legal name of the society, a list of the current board of directors and governance structure, as well as a certificate of good standing, a certificate of registration, a copy of the organization's bylaws and constitution, or proof of insurance. And if you are considering applying, but you're in the process of achieving your nonprofit status, on a case-by-case basis, FPCC will consider your application. And so please contact hsp@fpcc.ca so that we can discuss this further with the program manager. All of this information is also available and written in the same language in the funding guide. So what costs are covered? Eligible costs must apply directly and be essential to the project. And the peer review committee will review your budget to determine if costs are reasonable and have been accurately estimated. Please keep in mind this year that you only have to submit one budget for the Heritage Stewardship Program. So some examples of eligible costs are salaries and wages that are specific to the project. For honoraria, FPCC covers $150 to $250 for a half day, or $300 to $500 for a full day. And this will be depending on the activities and community protocols. However, rates above these amounts must be covered by the applicant organization. Contractors and consultants may be hired if a project requires special skills. And some other expense categories that we have are food and hospitality, meeting and event space rentals, travel and accommodation, printing costs, materials and supplies, equipment and rental costs, which includes purchases for computers and recording devices, and any software that's needed to achieve the project's objectives. And then we also cover some administrative costs. If you have expenses that don't fit into these categories, they may still be eligible as other expenses. So please contact me if you have any expenses that you don't think fall into the categories that I've listed here. Please note that we do have some limitations for budget expenses. So the first is for contractors. They may not exceed more than 30% of the funding requested, and you must make your best efforts to hire Indigenous or a BC First Nations contractor. If you're not able to hire one, then please provide justification for why a non-BC First Nations contractor was hired. And if the contractor will cost over $1,000, you must provide a written quote with your program application. For equipment, rentals, and purchases, you may not exceed 20% of the funding requested. There is an exception to this, which is if you have a project that includes digitization and archiving. And for those projects, you can use up to 80% of your funding with a maximum of $30,000 towards equipment and rentals and purchases. And finally, administration costs may not exceed 15% of the funding requested. And some additional application requirements that I'd like to go over. First of all, you must attach a minimum of 2 letters. So that's 1 governance letter and 1 community support letter. I'm going to detail a little bit more about those in the next slide. And then secondly, please ensure your application has all the additional documentation uploaded. So if you have additional confirmed funding, you must include proof of this funding. This might be a funding agreement or letters from donors and sponsors. And any applications with contractors over $1,000 need to provide the quote from that contractor. For letters of support, there are some specific guidelines to follow, depending on if you're a band or a nonprofit society. So for the governance letters, a band would provide a dated and signed band council resolution or a letter of support of approval dated and signed by the BC First Nation chief, band manager, and or a member of council. And if you're a society, this would look like a dated and signed letter of approval from the executive director or the general manager. For community support for bands, this would be a letter of support project participant who will not receive financial benefit from the project. And a collaborating community member or a person of high standing could also write the community approval letter. It should not be from the chief or a member of council or the band manager or a signing authority of the applicant organization because they will be indicating their support through the governance letter. And please note that the governance letter and the community support letter cannot be written by the same person. For societies, for the community approval letter, it's required to be a letter of support from a BC First Nation in the territory where the project is proposed, and that shares the same First Nation language as the society submitting the application. So this could be from a band council resolution, or a letter from a chief or council member, or a letter from established BC First Nation organization that is also operating in the area where the project is proposed and is currently an fpcc grant recipient. In addition to those 2 letters, of course, we would accept additional letters of support that show community support. And all of the information that I've shared here with these specific details is outlined in detail in our funding guide. And Lucas has shared a link of the funding guide in the chat. And when you're preparing your letters, please make sure that you're submitting the appropriate letter and that all of them are dated and signed because we can't accept applications with letters that are not dated and signed. Finally, I'd like to share some suggestions that will help you succeed as you're developing your project proposal. These are things that will help the HSP peer review committee to evaluate your grant application. And the applications can't be reviewed by the peer review committee unless all of the important information is provided. So when you're submitting your application, make sure that you have a clear project description, and this project description will paint a picture of the project's goals and provide an overview of the activities. A balanced project budget will detail the descriptions and cost breakdowns for each category. A thorough work plan with dates and or timeframes for the key activities will give a kind of step by step to show the peer review committee all the stages that will take place to achieve the project's goals. And finally, make sure that the project timeline fits in the funding term, which is March 23, 2026 to February 26, 2027. So while funding decisions are made by a committee of reviewers, which are made up of peers who have experience and knowledge in cultural heritage stewardship, FPCC staff like myself can provide support for applicants through the application project. And we can also provide some general feedback. So if you'd like to receive feedback from FPCC staff Please submit your application at least 2 weeks before the deadline. So that's Monday, February 2nd, and send us an email at hsp@fpcc.ca with a request for it to be reviewed. And make sure you include the application ID, which is assigned to your application in our grant portal. Due to the number of requests we receive, we can't guarantee that we'll have capacity to review applications if they're sent after this deadline of Monday, February 2nd. And please keep in mind that while we're here to help with your application, all the final decisions are made by the peer review committee. So the timeline for this grant is that the application deadline is due on February 18th, 2026 at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Your project activities will begin on or after March 23rd, 2026. We have an interim report due on September 25th, and the projects must be completed and the final reports are due on February 26th, 2027 next year. So how can your organization apply? Applications are currently open in the grant portal, and Lucas will provide a link to the grant portal in the chat. You do need to have an account to apply, and we only accept applications that are submitted in the grant portal. If you need support with the grant portal, please reach out to me at hsp@fpcc.ca, or you can give me a phone number at 250-652-5952, extension 283, and we can provide support both for the grant portal, but also for preparing the application and answer any questions about your application. We are so grateful for your interest in applying to one of FPCC's grants, and we wish you the best of luck for your application.